Many people spend their lives believing they need luck to change their destiny, when in reality, what's missing is awareness. People chase after formulas, miraculous promises, ready-made answers, and forget that true power was never outside. It has always been there, within, waiting for the moment when the mind quiets and the being decides to awaken. This video is not another motivational speech. It's a call to lucidity. It's a reminder that the universe doesn't reward those who wait, but those who act with presence. What imprisons most people isn't the lack of opportunities, but the attachment to excuses that feed stagnation. And those who insist on justifying their own fear remain prisoners of the same walls they built with their own thought. These 5 pieces of advice you're about to hear are not spiritual theories or catchy phrases. They are principles that, when understood and applied, reconfigure the way you see yourself and the world. They challenge old beliefs, break through the illusions of the comfort zone, and reveal what few have the courage to admit. No one is going to change your life for you. Perhaps this idea causes discomfort, and it's good that it does, because discomfort is the first sign that consciousness is moving. This video is not for those seeking distraction, it's for those seeking to awaken. And if you've made it this far, it's because a part of you has already understood that transformation begins now. So stay present. Listen with your heart, not with haste. Because at the end of this journey, if you allow it, you will understand what Itzhak Bentov always wanted to show the world. The evolution of consciousness is the true purpose of human existence. The first piece of advice is simple, but few understand it deeply. True change begins with a decision. It's not a passing thought, nor a promise made in moments of pain. It's a silent, firm choice that is born within consciousness when it finally grows tired of blaming the world for everything that went wrong. At this point, the individual awakens and realizes that no external factor, not color, family, past, or identity, has the power to limit their expansion. The only true obstacle has always been conformity itself. The human mind is an expert at creating elegant justifications to maintain the old way of living. It creates stories, labels, and explanations that sound logical but serve only to postpone the inevitable, the confrontation with one's own responsibility. It's easier to blame destiny than to take control of it. However, when consciousness recognizes that each result is a direct fruit of its own decisions, a new field of possibilities begins to open. Decision is an energy that transforms. It doesn't happen in time. It happens in frequency. When a being truly decides, the universe has no choice but to respond. And this response doesn't come in the form of instant miracles, but in small opportunities that can only be seen by those who are awake. Those who decide to change begin to see the world with different eyes, eyes that perceive paths where there were once walls. The power of this decision doesn't depend on material resources or external incentive. It depends only on lucidity. It's the instant when the individual understands they can choose differently, that they no longer need to repeat the same pattern of pain, fear, procrastination. And upon realizing this, they awaken something deep, the confidence that their own mind can become an ally, not an enemy. When a human being decides to evolve, everything around them begins to react. People distance themselves, situations change, environments transform. And it's precisely at this point that many turn back, confusing discomfort with regression. But discomfort is merely the sign that the old structure is being broken. It's the natural price of transition between who one was and who one is about to become. And in this new state of consciousness, the individual begins to perceive something essential. The environment they live in, the people who surround them, and the stimuli they receive silently influence their destiny. This perception opens the portal to the second piece of advice, the one that speaks about the power of environment in the construction of evolution. The second piece of advice reveals a principle that few understand deeply. The environment shapes destiny. The energy that surrounds you silently defines the rhythm of your consciousness. It's impossible to sustain a lucid mind in a place that vibrates in stagnation. Everything around, The people, the sounds, the conversations, the habits, acts as an invisible current that drags the spirit in the direction of what is most frequent in that space. Human beings tend to adapt to their environment, and it's in this unconscious adaptation that many lose their essence. The environment, more than scenery, is a force field that shapes behavior, influences thoughts, and even the way reality is perceived. Therefore, remaining surrounded by those who live in superficiality is a subtle way of weakening one's own purpose. The environment doesn't just reflect the level of consciousness, it defines it. Remaining among voices that vibrate in complaint, fear, and limitation is to accept, even if unconsciously, living in frequencies that don't belong to what one seeks to be. Changing the environment, therefore, is not escape. It's spiritual self-preservation. It's recognizing that certain emotional landscapes make the soul sick, and that there are places where silence is more healing than 1,000 words. The environment shapes destiny because it influences choices, and choices build the future. The people who walk alongside, the habits cultivated daily, and the space where the mind rests are extensions of one's own energy. Every detail cooperates to elevate or weaken the inner state, and when someone begins to perceive this, their gaze changes. Home becomes a temple, friendships become mirrors, and routine reveals itself as a sacred ritual of vibrational construction. This understanding doesn't call for isolation, but discernment. Knowing who and what approaches is an act of spiritual maturity. The awakened being chooses where they want to flourish and refuses to remain where their roots find no light. Consciousness doesn't expand by chance. It expands when the environment favors growth. And even when the world insists on offering noise, those who have learned to protect their field create within themselves a space of purity, an internal environment that no external interference can dominate. It's at this point that a common trap emerges. The search for external solutions to relieve the discomfort born from inner disconnection. Many try to silence the soul's calling with medications and diagnoses, believing that something outside themselves will bring balance. But balance cannot be bought. It's built with awareness, discipline, and responsibility. And it's about this modern illusion that the next piece of advice delves deeper. The third piece of advice brings a truth that many avoid facing. Medications are not the solution. Modern human beings have learned to medicate their own consciousness. When the mind becomes turbulent, they seek pills. When the heart feels empty, they seek diagnoses. When life seems directionless, they run after labels that justify the weariness of existing. And in doing so, they forget that no chemical substance is capable of healing the disconnection between the being and their own essence. The body speaks what the soul silences. All restlessness, all anxiety, and all emotional imbalance are signs that something within is asking for reconnection. But the world teaches us to silence the symptoms, not to understand the cause. And so, the individual distances themselves from their divine nature, believing that healing will come from outside. There's nothing wrong with seeking medical help when necessary. The error lies in surrendering one's own power of transformation into the hands of formulas that only put pain to sleep but don't dissolve its origin. True healing happens when consciousness takes responsibility. When the human being recognizes that their mind is not an enemy but a tool, and that without discipline, this tool dominates them. Modern labels like ADHD, depression, anxiety may describe behaviors, but they don't explain the absence of presence. Many use these names as refuge to avoid the internal work of observing and correcting patterns that repeat themselves. Spiritual awakening begins precisely when a person stops hiding behind definitions and decides to understand themselves beyond them. Medications can calm the body, but it's self-knowledge that liberates the spirit. And for those who walk the path of consciousness expansion, understanding this is essential. The awakened being learns to perceive that restlessness is not a disease. It's a symptom of misalignment between what they live and what they were born to live. Vital energy, when blocked by fear and lack of purpose, begins to express itself as anguish. and no medication can replace the process of realigning purpose with action. The third piece of advice is not a criticism of medicine. It's a call to spiritual responsibility. It's a reminder that no one can save you, because the power to heal yourself lies in the way you choose to live, think, and feel. A disciplined mind heals the body. Full attention heals excess. Daily commitment to one's own growth heals emptiness. When a human being understands this, something changes in their vibration. They stop seeking shortcuts and begin seeking coherence. Will strengthens, focus aligns, and energy begins to respond. It's at this point that an even deeper discovery emerges, that true power is born from self-control. And this is what the fourth piece of advice reveals. When a human being realizes that claiming their own power is not optional, they are ready to understand this fourth piece of advice. Control is freedom. And it's not about external control, domination over others or over the surrounding scenario. It's about internal mastery, the ability to manage one's own time, habits, thoughts, and energy with clarity. Authentic freedom is born when the individual stops reacting and begins to act with awareness. Most people associate freedom with doing whatever you want, but this illusory notion becomes captivity as soon as desire becomes routine and routine becomes addiction. True control doesn't live from repression, it lives from conscious choice. Managing time is understanding that each hour surrendered can lose significant strength if it's not aligned with inner life. Choosing habits is more than defining routines. It's affirming that the person one intends to be has priority over the mechanical reflex of the old self. And managing energy involves something even more subtle. Perceiving where attention circulates, which emotion gains weight, what inner voice dominates the silence. Thinking that freedom is the absence of limits is to deceive one's own soul. Genuine freedom rises within clear, self-constructed limit. The more a person leaves their own life without architecture, the more vulnerable they become to the chaos that others create. Controlling doesn't mean becoming rigid. It means structuring the internal environment so that the external no longer dictates one's course. A disciplined mind stops being a spectator and becomes the author of their own story. This level of control requires readiness to face what is done by habit, complained about through self-pity, or postponed through fear. It's taking flight knowing that the wings were formed through one's own efforts. It's recognizing that no one is going to arrive to give you the manual, and that the courage you're waiting for already lives in your chest. Control over oneself generates freedom because it eliminates the phantom of depending on someone or something to move forward. When managed with clarity, each choice becomes a seed of consistency, and each action becomes a bridge between who one was and who one is willing to be. In this internal space of order, genuine expansion is born. The person stops throwing energy in the wrong direction and begins to channel it toward the purpose that resonates with their essence. Then, the body, mind, and spirit begin to work as a single orchestra where the silence of interruptions allows the sound of creation. And it's at this point that one understands that transformation doesn't arise from the unpredictable leap, but from the continuous drops of applied attention. Small practices repeated that shape integrity. Consistency, finally, reveals itself as the fifth piece of advice. The fifth piece of advice closes this teaching with the clarity of those who understand the nature of evolution. Consistency generates success. Most people seek quick transformations, but every solid change is built in the silence of small daily gestures. What defines someone's destiny is not the intensity of a single moment, but the discipline of repeating what strengthens purpose even when no one is watching. The human mind is unstable by nature. One day it wants everything, the next it hides from effort. That's why consistency is the true training ground of the soul. It doesn't depend on motivation, it depends on commitment. Each time an individual maintains a practice, keeps a promise, or stays firm when will wavers, they strengthen the invisible thread that connects them to their own future. Success is merely the reflection of this constant alignment between intention and action. Being consistent is not doing a lot, it's doing always. It's acting with presence. Spiritual energy needs continuity to expand. Each day of discipline is like an invisible brick that sustains the inner temple of consciousness. Those who understand this don't seek shortcuts, because they know that time is an ally, not an enemy. The most lasting victories are silent, built step by step, without haste and without spectacle. Consistency also reveals who truly believes in what they say, because believing is acting. There's no point in repeating beautiful words about purpose if routine contradicts every one of them. The universe responds to coherence, not to the emotional intensity of a moment. It's in the repetition of right choices that destiny bends. When an individual understands the force of constant rhythm, failure loses power. Difficult days stop being enemies and become part of the process. With each attempt, the spirit becomes more resilient. With each small advance, vibration elevates, and in this cycle of practice and improvement, success stops being a distant point and becomes a state of being. The fifth piece of advice doesn't speak about defeating others, but about defeating oneself every day with humility and persistence. It's this constancy that transforms a decision into destiny and a purpose into reality. When a person maintains focus even amid chaos, they prove that inner light is stronger than any shadow. And it's in this understanding that the journey completes itself, not as an end, but as a new beginning that invites the being to apply everything they've learned. Stop for an instant and observe. What are you feeding within yourself? Excuses or the will to evolve? Distractions or clarity of purpose? Consciousness doesn't awaken by chance. It awakens when the human being begins to act according to what they've learned. If something within you vibrated during this video, it's because the calling has already begun. So take these pieces of advice into your day. Test them, practice them, adjust them. See how much can change when action replaces waiting. And remember, awakening doesn't happen in a single instant, it happens in each lucid choice you make. Now, if this content touched you in some way, if it awakened a new thought or reignited an old desire to grow, subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and continue this journey of expansion. There's still much to explore within you, and this is only the beginning.